Hello, everyone. I'm Mystery.
And I am Lawton Mortimer, the Authenticator. And I guess we're going to follow in the footsteps of a certain Romanian YouTuber because we're talking about the latest incidents of attempted institutional capture slash ideological and religious conversion by the social justice set, the
Yep,
localizers.
yep. Anime localizations. It's a really serious problem. Like all the things we love, the stories that we've come to enjoy over the years. I honestly did not realize until recently just how deeply they were infested with a lot of these social justice bullshit.
Well, that's the tricky thing. We never really do realize until they start making moves, and then it's like, holy shit! How did our institution get institutionally captured? Like it's funny. I mean, obviously, the earliest example of pushback against their ilk is Gamergate in like 2013 and 2014, but they started in terms of like academically in like 2009. That's why you got people like Yvette Falarka and Chanta Driver doing, by any means necessary and that kind of stuff. It was only until, it started in 2009, and only when they felt comfortable in 2013 did they start making moves. Fortunately, the internet is also a very vast and quick thing because as soon as they started making active moves, people noticed and went, get your ideology out of my game space. But unfortunately, they're it seems like they are, the more we push back against them, the more entrenched they get, and the more vectors of escape from their ideology we have, the more points of attack they make. Because this is how you convert an empire. You convert the clergy, which in our context are like the sciences and or the academics, and then you convert the arts and the cultural institutions, and along the way you convert the kings and the aristocratic class, and then boom, you have a converted civilization.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time just thinking about how far this problem has spread, and honestly, one of the things it reminds me of is like one of those evil organizations in spy movies that just have like agents all over the world doing their evil will.
Hail Rainbow Hydra.
Hey, Ed Brewer, I see you in the chat. Nice to see you again in 2024.
Yes, happy current year plus 9, everyone.
But to talk about localization, I have a number of examples that just really just caught my eye. Let me just bring one up. I have them on different tabs on my tablet here. Let me see. Uh, they often like use like modern political terminology and just act like it's a normal thing that people talk about when really it's only ever talked about online. Like let me give you an example here. This game is, I believe, Neo. The world ends with you, and the Japanese line it says, "Is curry made by me a Japanese, not an Indian, authentic?" And in the English translation, it says, "Can I even call this curry, or is it just cultural appropriation?"
In their defense, and this is going to be a very backhanded, very loose defense, in their circles, it is normal because they're a bunch of upper middle class aristocratic toffs with oodles and oodles of highfalutin education. They don't actually know how the real world talks, and if at any point they become aware of how the real world talks, they hate it and they consider it to be self hatred and self loathing and internalized oppression, yada yada.
Well, that's the thing. Like asking whether or not someone who's Japanese can make authentic Indian curry is one thing, but cultural appropriation has a very specific political meaning, and they know that. They have to know that
They
there's a
don't know that. They don't see the difference. It's just like how you remember the Francesca Ramsey video where she it was called Five Excuses for Slavery That Need to Stop, when in actuality the thing she was trying to argue against was the idea of reparations. Well, in her mind, at least at that point, there is no difference between apo- slavery apologia and countering reparations, because to her, reparations is a natural consequence of and a way to assuage guilt from slavery. It naturally follows in her mind. Just like in this instance, there is no reason in the SJW's mind why you would care about cultural differences unless you were caring about it in the context of cultural appropriation, because that is, in their mind, the natural consequence of that line of thinking.
I actually starting to see that now because in a tweet that's connected to this picture, it says, like, this is just a good translation that keeps the original meaning intact. What are they complaining about? So, like, if they
They can't
genuinely,
see it. It's normal to them.
it's like people who, it's like people who like live next to a train track. Like at first they hear it, but as they start hearing it over and over again, eventually it just becomes background noise that they don't even notice anymore.
Or to use a more topical reference, it's the cultural equivalent of the ceiling bird.
I guess the not changing the smoke
Smoke
detector.
alarm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but that's just one example. There are far more egregious ones. Let me just pull some up. See, this is an example, but this is regarding the same game. Basically saying that the localization and changes dialogue is good because the characters were too bland otherwise.
Um, I'm sorry, but you guys are the people who gave us the new Warriors and Velma. You don't get to have an opinion on what constitutes a well-rounded character ever in perpetuity.
Yeah, like, first of all, it's not your job to determine whether or not the dialogue is bland. It's your job to put the dialogue in freaking English. And your dialogue is not better at all. I mean, at least in the old dialogue, the person talks like an actual human being. Your dialogue is just pure cringe.
And again, the sad thing is they are so worldview blind. They are so convinced that their one worldview is the correct answer that they cannot see beyond it ever. It doesn't make sense to them. They don't understand the concept of other ways of thinking or other ways of getting from A to B on that in that way. Now, mind you, there have always been circumstantial changes to dialogue in dubs and localization. The difference is one of these was motivated by ideology, the other was motivated by likability, relatability, and the ability to translate the the Japanese specific idioms to something that an American would recognize. For example, that's why Joey Wheeler in the dub speaks with a like Brooklyn accent, because the what is the word for the like specific Japanese dialogue? The
Okay,
katakana.
Osaka.
There we go. I couldn't think of the word. But the specific dialect of Japanese that Joichi's character, which is Joey in the original Japanese, the original like version of Japanese that he speaks is meant to be a very like sort of low class street, if you will, variety of speech. Therefore, the best way to translate that was turn Joey Wheeler into a ersatz New Yorker.
Yeah, I mean, I understand something like that, and I don't think it really uh, hurt the show. We were still able to get the gist of his character with that accent included. But like a lot of these things these people do, like just downright hurt the product. And we would have someone here on social media saying, "I'm still angry at this. These disgusting localizers killed the whole The World Ends With You series and its future. When fans found out about this, they avoided it like cancer, and the game flopped."
Yeah,
I mean, I could
be-
totally get that. I mean, I told you before that I didn't buy the Baten Kaitos collection remaster that was released for the Switch because I heard out the localizers, injected their bullshit into it. So I just avoided it.
well, and it's even worse when you consider there are people who straight up cannot deal with the sub. Like I have optic nerve damage. I can't simultaneously watch the thing I'm supposed to be watching on TV and also pay attention to the subtitles because it splits my attention too much. So
But
I go for dubs.
well, here's the thing,
And
like,
for as much as subtitle obsessives can be snobby about that, the average person, sad but true, especially in America, wants at the very least, slightly Americanized version of the entertainment that they enjoy. So, how many people who rely on serviceable dubbing, or at least, ideally good dubbing, but as we all know, dubbing isn't always the greatest thing in the world. But how many people that rely strictly on dubbing and could never deal with the subtitles are going to be lost simply by virtue of not only did you westernize it, but you specifically put it in the social justice framework.
well, here's the thing though. Even if you do the subtitles, you're still not safe because going back to the Baten Kaitos collection, as I mentioned, the original, both of the original games had very great English dubs, but they didn't include the English dub in the remastered collection because they changed the words in the text box. And so, if they included the English dub, the spoken word and the words in the text box would not line up. So, they only included the Japanese dub of the game.
In other words, if we gave you the English dub, you might be able to escape social justice for 5 minutes, and we can't allow you to do that.
Yeah.
It it'd be like um, sorry, my mom just walked in. I will have to mute and be off screen for a second so that I can help her find something.
Yeah, no problem. All right. So, yeah, these localizers have basically infected the in every strata of the Western anime industry. Um, it's not just down to the people making the translations because if they had decent management, if they had decent editors, this stuff would get caught before it ever got released, and we wouldn't have to deal with this. However, that's the whole one of the problems with the whole woke social justice movement is that their friends get into management and then they hire their friends for the translation or the writing or the editing jobs, and the entire medium suffers as a result. I mean, just look at what happened with comics.
Well, and it must be said that this isn't the first time this kind of thing happened. There was a time where you did have the Hays Code, and they wouldn't allow certain things if it wasn't Christian enough. And the sad thing is, the SJWs do exactly the same, if not worse, things than Thomas Bowdler did or the Hays Code did, but they can't see it because in their heads, their one worldview is the correct worldview. And they don't seem to be aware that literally everyone who has ever done anything or been censorious in the name of morality has thought that their worldview was the one true worldview and therefore they were justified. They do not have the notion of consistency of principle because they literally cannot see beyond their worldview. Not only is it good and morally righteous, but there is absolutely no way that a good thinking person would ever do anything other than one worldview to them.
No one who actually likes the thing that they're working on would want it to change from the original.
Yes, but as we all know, these people are generally taught in the Western art school way of viewing art, and therefore you're not supposed to like things for its in-universe logic or its character consistency or anything inherent to the IP. You're supposed to like it as a non-diegetic thematic means to some kind of social, political, or moral end, don't you know? Art isn't there to be enjoyed on its own terms for its own sake. It's there to be a weapon for culture.
You know, to get off topic a little bit, you mentioned in universe logic, and there was actually a post on Steam for the new Warhammer Rogue Trader game that was released recently, and
Oh
one of
no.
one of the person there, um, you are on this planet that's being overrun by a chaos cult, and you can choose to save people, choose to save this Adeptus Mechanicus generator artifact, or you can choose to blow up the planet to stop the code from spreading. And what he did was he tried to save the people on the ground, and he tried to save the artifact. And as a result, he received a permanent debuff for this for as a result of
Of
his
chaos
action.
corruption.
Yes. So me, when I was faced with the situation, I chose to blow up the planet because I know 40k and I know what chaos does.
Well, it. There's a reason it's the standard practice of the Imperium. They call it exterminatus because the corruption will not be dealt with until it is dealt with. And here is the reason why specifically social justice is so sympathetic to chaos as a faction. I, I I've seen Art talk about this a lot, but I've never seen him address this particular point, which is in social justice, you're supposed to lionize atypicality, neurodivergency, etc. So in their minds, the only difference between a fundamentalist hoorah space marine of the Imperium and a chaos corrupted individual is literally a cultural difference. And not only is it wrong to try and, again, in the social justice framework, not only is it wrong to try and stigmatize that kind of divergency, but according to the logic of the social justice minded person who views the Imperium as quasi fascist or feudal, which quasi, feudal I will give them, quasi fascist I will not because they overuse that word to high heaven. Um, but by the logic of the social justice warrior, the chaos position is actually better than the Imperium full stop because it encourages things like freedom, indulgence, deviancy from the norm, divergency from the norm, etc. So in the true believer social justice mindset, not only is it wrong to crack down on chaos, but it actually would make you the bad guy if you did, because chaos are actually the good guys because they're in favor of freedom and indulgence and uh, the abolishment and or subversion of all norms. Whereas the Imperium is an authoritarian quasi-fascist, again, in their mind, power structure,
But
which
one
is
of the
inherently
reasons,
bad.
but one of the reasons that the Imperium is so authoritarian is because chaos exists in the first place.
Yep. I keep every time the topic of social justice and Warhammer comes up, I keep thinking of that one singing group that they called in to do. I think it was a halftime show at a sporting event. They were called the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, and every time I think of it, it's just like my inherent geek senses go off, and I go, "Do you want an Eye of Terror? Because this is how you get an Eye of Terror."
I'm just saying, burn the heretic seems like an increasingly acceptable position.
Like I really wish we weren't there because obviously with my gayness and my very overtly occult tendencies, um, I I don't want to see us go back to witch burning, and yet
No, not witch burning, heretic burning.
I I I don't want an eye of terror. And not only is social justice repugnant in and of itself, but literally will probably wind us up in the chaos position.
All right, let's get back on topic. We have this quote from an interview about a localization editor talking about I believe, a visual novel that he was working on. It says, Lucas Staines Gate by Darling's Embrace route seems like it would be one that could be difficult to approach. How would you ensure that the writing in it came together as well as it did and was sensitive to his identity? Were you concerned about how his storyline would be received? Okay, before I read on, I just want to write one thing. The Japanese can write good gay characters. These people can't.
Yeah, as the token gay guy on stream, I can confirm this. I have been interested and, more importantly, turned on by many gay characters in anime and manga and Japanese adjacent stuff. I never come away from a social justice written gay character with anything but a combination of impotent rage and quasi academic spurging about why it's wrong and stupid.
Let's see. See, Elliot Gay, that's actually his name.
I I mean, what's in a name? I think Shakespeare might have been wrong. Names are somewhat important, it seems.
See, so I actually handled Luca's route in Darling, and yeah, I kind of knew going in that it would be difficult. The problem you run into with characters like Luca is that you have comments in the Japanese script that aren't meant to be read as offensive or problematic, but that read as much in English. I just want to point out, he is the one that is finding these things problematic, not necessarily the general audience.
Or English itself. Like, again, this is what I call worldview blindness. They literally cannot tell the difference between what they think is moral and normal and what the average person will, because they don't consider the possibility that other people have a different worldview. And if ever you bring up to them that other people have different worldviews, they immediately go, well, they're just misguided and ignorant and stupid and don't know any better and blah, 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 blah. And so it is my job to, from on high, teach them like I'm a freaking parent and they're a freaking child.
It's making the reader feel that way is not the intent of the Japanese in those cases. So the issue is how to find words that carry the same meaning without all the unnecessary, mean spirited, bigoted baggage they might carry in English.
Your worldview is not the center of the universe, please. Fuck off.
It says Luca is a wonderful, wonderful character, and I truly felt his route in My Darling's Embrace was one of the more touching ones. So I did a lot of talking with non binary friends and family about language and what was concerned the proper way to phrase certain things.
Did you consider talking to the general public about this topic? Because I'm pretty certain large swaths of the general public would have told you, I don't give a fuck about what your moral sensibilities dictate, translate correctly.
Did you try consulting with the original author for a way to convey their intent?
Well, I don't even necessarily, as I've explained several times, I don't even necessarily center the authorial intent. I do, however, insist that morality be the least possible consideration in situations like this. What we need in these situations is meritocracy, morality be damned. Because when morality is not damned in this context, this is what happens. Either you get traditionalist Christians going, won't somebody please think of the children? Or you get people like this going, won't somebody please think of literally all of the demographics?
See, see. There is one translation here from an anime called Escape the Infinity, where this guy, who I'm presuming is a villain, says, "All you fools who love skateboarding." And in the English, he says, I can barely get this sentence out. It's just
Oh dear. Brace yourselves for impact of cringe, folks.
it says, "Dear God, hey bitches and bros and non-binary hoes."
What?
They changed that from "all you fools who love skateboarding."
But, but, that, I, I can't. I can't with it. I just, it, no. Again, like, everyone I'm sure remembers how occasionally cringe the four kids alterations were back in the day. Like, for example, whenever anyone was smoking, they were actually sucking on a lollipop in the
I
dub
remember that from
because,
One Piece.
yeah, because we can't encourage the kiddies to do the smoking. This is that. This is literally that. And yet, if you were to walk up to these people in a neutral context and complain about how awful the Four Kids dub used to be because it swapped out like cigarettes for lollipops, they would agree with you, but
Well,
they wouldn't understand it if you pointed out that this was them doing the exact same thing just from the other end. Because literally, special pleading of, well, yeah, my morality is obviously good and better than everyone else's, therefore it's good that I enforce it by gunpoint of cultural censure, basically. Never mind that that's exactly what the like family values minded Christians used to do that led to the stupid all cigarettes must be lollipops thing.
see, here's actually someone making a comment about that translation. It says, "I actually kind of like this one. If the context is what it seems, at least, I don't know. No one in America says fools who love skateboarding. I can 100% see the other line, though. I have never heard someone actually use the phrase non-binary in a situation that was not on the internet in my life. One and two.
I have from upper middle class twits, and again, here we have the disconnect in this case isn't even a disconnect between American and Japanese. It's a disconnect between our up their own ass, moral tough aristocratic betters and the plebs,
Well,
and they don't even and they can't even tell that they're spiting the plebs anymore.
here's the thing. Like she's complaining about this isn't how people talk in America. Most anime and manga do not take place in America. And people know that. And they've accepted that for a long time now. So you can't make this sense you can't make the argument that Americans don't talk this way. Well, because it's not America. They're not in America. And the audience knows that. So you don't have to make things sound like they would in America. You just have to make it so people understand what they are saying.
Also, on the topic of nobody says fools in that context, um, the entire career of Mr. T would like a word with you because that's exactly how Mr. T uses the word fool in that. I could totally see if you know we were watching a Mr. T movie. I could totally see him say something equivalent to "Oh, you fools who love skateboarding." Like that is something he would say. So yeah, there are contexts in which we have or would use that language. And I could totally see fools be used as a slang word in that way. Would it be a bit clunky and awkward? Sure. But is it permissible under the like translation barrier? Most definitely. And
And
again, there are
even if
Western examples of it happening, so what the fuck?
even if you didn't like the way that it was phrased, there are still other ways that you could, you know, change the phrasing of it to keep that exact same meaning instead of just going completely out of left field with the other translation.
Yeah, you could have said something like y'all or um all the people out there, or like it this really sounds like something that a like announcer character would say. So like there are ways to make this kind of language work. And I'm not even sure it's not supposed to be cringy in the original Japanese. So if it is supposed to be that kind of cringy like announcer dialogue, then yeah, there are ways to trade out that dialogue with, you know, Western cringy announcer dialogue, and then it works fine.
Yeah, you could have changed the phrase to "all you moronic skaters" or something like that. That would still keep the same meaning, essentially, and you wouldn't have to bring up people's gender identity for whatever fucking
Or
reason.
hell, all you skateboarder idiots. There, better context. Same sentiment.
This is it. Just keeps freaking happening. Like,
Yep. The more things change, the more they stay the same. The only difference between the ESG style Hays Code and the like family values Christian style Hays Code is what direction the political compass happens to be pointing. And in either case, my answer to the question is how about instead of moving left or right, we move down in terms of the political compass? Because there's an entire libertarian wing of the political compass that isn't like does not care about this moralistic censorious nonsense and shouldn't.
this is a translation that's it's not necessarily woke. It's just bad. Let's see. It says, but compared to Tokyo, isn't this like totally mid Kitami? I mean, like using mid. Like I get that the character's supposed to be a young woman who like would use slang, but like still to like use mid, it's gonna be completely dated in like 5 years.
It's specifically hipster lingo. It is not something that your average, you know, working class lad or lass is going to say.
Yeah,
It's it's literally Californianization. It's not Americanization anymore. It's upper class tough Californianization. And they can't tell the difference between that and Americanization because they literally can't conceive of any other quote unquote valid American who doesn't think like them.
here's actually a localization that a Japanese, um, that someone from Japan noticed, and I wasn't familiar with this game, but like whenever I read the translation of what they're saying because they typed it out in Japanese, like it really is like so freaking dumb. Let's see. He says, in addition to ideology, there are many people who insist that it is localization by changing various things as they like. For example, in the English version of Etsy from the Ulterior series, her hunger for men was emphasized, and her name was changed from Etsy Earhard to Etsy D, a vulgar pun about STDs. No respect for the original work at all.
Okay, why? That
Apparently, somebody thought it was funny.
like
As to,
Earhart actually sounds um less uh cringy and oversexed than it, I I just don't even want to say it. It's not good. It's just cringe. It's literally a how do you do fellow kids ism. It's they're that out of touch. And the kicker is this isn't even women in their 30s and 40s that are this out of touch. This is people allegedly, you know, in their early to mid 20s, but they're still so far up their ass and so far up the aristocratic ladder that they don't realize how cringe they're being.
well, the thing is, like, there are a lot of people who have been in this industry and for a long time. One of the problems with think with like groups like this is that once you have like friends and clout and influence, you're basically like a cockroach. It's really hard to get rid of you.
Alas, yeah, it's very much the Panderverse-ism from South Park. Put a chick in it, make her labor gay.
I mean, they're doing that with the new Star Wars yet again. So
I oh god, oh the ray of it all.
they learn nothing. They learn literally nothing at all.
The only good thing about Ray is it is going to be the only Star Wars project in history to do worse than Solo: A Star Wars Story, and maybe once it barely makes 100 million at the global box office, maybe once it performs like akin to the Marvels, The Flash, or like Blue Beetle, maybe then they will realize, oh wait, you mean the social justice is the problem, like people have been saying all along? Yes, we've been telling you a for literally a decade at this point. We
They
are
know.
we are now closer to 2014 than we are to 2013. So Gamergate is more than a decade old. And if we make it all the way to 2027 still dealing with this shit, or 2028 still dealing with this shit, then we will literally have been 10 years from the end of like Gamergate as a solid thing.
Well, here's the thing. They know that people hate this. Don't you remember the Disney meeting where they basically told that we are aware that the
Yeah, we don't
moral
know we don't know how to associate with our audience, so we just do shit we want.
yeah, it's like so they know that people don't like this. They just don't freaking care.
Well, that, or they think, I honestly think it's sort of a sunken cost boiling the frog fallacy. They think that if they just carry on as normal, as though it's normal, until people have forgotten that it ever wasn't normal, people will start liking this because because the social justice mindset believes in the like John Locke style tabula rasa. They don't believe that anyone has preferences because they have preferences. The idea is always a social construct. Any standards or preferences are social constructs. If you just change the social construct, then you can change what people like if you work at it hard enough. That's their logic.
I have
Fortunately and amusingly, it is not so, and so I look forward to Ray performing like the Marvels or worse.
watching current Star Wars is kind of like watching two trains collide. You know it's going to be an absolute disaster and a horror show, but you're also kind of morbidly curious to see exactly how the destruction takes place.
Like and like I didn't realize just how bad it was going to get. Like for the longest time, the Night Sisters of Dathomir have been one of my favorite factions in the Star Wars universe for, I assume, fairly self-explanatory reasons. And then Ahsoka came out and completely ruined the Night Sisters, and I'm just like I was commiserating with people who were having things they loved ruined, and then you had to come and ruin things that I liked, and now I just don't even wanna anymore. Just like stop, please, it's dead. Stop killing things that I love, please.
Hmm.
But they're not going to. In fact, according to some rumors that I heard, the Night Sisters of Dathomir are going to play a large part in Rey because I literally had nothing else to live for, and they're still like, let's make him suffer even more. I guess.
They needed more strong women characters to absolutely fucking ruin.
You mean like Leia, Padme, the sister of Mortis, Mother freaking Talzin, where we're on the topic of the Night Sisters, was literally the third most powerful being or force user outside of the ones of Mortis during the Clone Wars era. She was on the same power level as Palpatine and Yoda. And she doesn't count as a strong character I'm waiting for an explanation, and I don't think anyone could conceivably have one. Mother Talzin was my favorite expanded universe character of all time, and I'm glad that she's still canon thanks to Dave Filoni. But like to act as though to act as though strong female characters haven't always been central to Star Wars is bullshit because Leia and Padme. But like to act as though the Night Sisters of freaking Dathomir, who control an entire planet of witches as a tribal matriarchy, aren't powerful enough to try and tell me that Mother Talzin wasn't strong enough by herself without feminist meddling is so much bullshit that I demand retribution. God damn it!
Let's see. Regarding the localizers, apparently they are not all beyond redemption. So some of them, at the very least, can be saved. Perhaps we should just, leave them out of there, like Sodom and Gomorrah, and then burn the whole thing down.
Can I was gonna say because there were in our childhoods there were localizers and they did their job well. Like there must be people who realize what's going on and don't want to see it happen. Surely. I have to believe that. For the sake of my sanity and faith in humanity, I have to believe that there are some like OG localizers from when we grew up who know that this is bullshit.
Let's see. This is apparently a localizer named Katrina, and she's talking about a project she worked on. Let's see. I was so thrilled and honored to be put on the Higurashi project. I'm assuming she's referring to the anime and light novels and the visual novel Higurashi no Naku Kuroni. But I knew a few terms were going to be rough on me, especially Satoko's Nini. I groused with my friends for weeks about how there was probably going to be a Satoko arc, and I was probably going to have to deal with backlash because I didn't want to use that term. I'd avoided borrowing a lot of terms in my translations and wanted to find a good alternative. Big Brother wasn't perfect, but it worked, and I was happier with that than Nini, and of course, you know the rest. Internet drama and death threats aside, looking back on the whole debacle, I realized that in my attempt to clean up the translation and appeal to a wider audience, I'd alienated the core audience, my fellow diehard fans that didn't want legacy terms changed. Changing those terms was a bit of a slap in the face. It's why I decided to go back to the legacy term for the second season, as well as retroactively fix the old episodes to use the legacy term as well. It's a lesson that was hard to learn, but one I'll take with me to future projects. I've also been careful to ensure that any terminology on new projects is in tip top shape, so no translator ahead of me feels the need to fix legacy terminology and deal with the same issue. Unfortunately, it just goes on about the thing about
Huzzah! She
our
can be taught.
yeah.
Won't you recommend?
So she actually realized that she had made a mistake by changing a term that was important to the core fan base, and went back and changed it. So it was good.
Self-awareness for the win. Now, if only, my dear Katrina, you could export that knowledge, that apparently very arcane thing that I would have thought would have been common sense, but is not for some reason. If you could export that knowledge to literally every SJW in the artistic space, you would qualify for secular sainthood, in my opinion.
Let's
Because
see.
not only did she experience self awareness, but she got it exactly right. The thing about in an attempt to appeal to everyone, I alienated the core fan base. Yes, that is exactly it. That is exactly correct. As soon as that knowledge permeates the rest of Hollywood, we might be back on some kind of track here. Please.
It seems like she, however, actually cared about the project though. Like she said herself that she was a diehard fan. So like when she realized that other diehard fans were upset, she understood why. But the thing is,
It's
like a lot of these
almost as
people,
though you should leave IPs in the hands of people who love and care about those IPs, and more importantly, understand them.
I feel like a lot of these people who are doing the translations now, they don't care as long as they're
Yeah, no,
happy.
they're doing it on purpose because again, art isn't to be valued for its own sake. Art is to be valued as a cultural non-diegetic weapon, don't you know?
It's like they want to be creative, but they're not talented enough. So instead, they're going to use their quote unquote creativity to, deface somebody else's work.
Well, no, it's not that directly spiteful towards creativity. What it is again the modern day art school mindset of in universe logic doesn't matter. Characters aren't to be viewed as three-dimensional entities in their own right, and you're not supposed to care about things on their own, or like for their own sake or on their own terms. You're supposed to view everything as culturally or morally or politically utilitarian, and the value of any given IP is to be viewed in the context of can it be used as a cultural, moral, and political weapon? If yes, then it's good. If not, then who cares?
We have another change. It says creepy sexual harassment scene from Famicom Detective Club gets censored in utterly insane scene about getting fired for not killing a bee. This is going to be a trip.
Oh
So
dear.
this is see a redditor called Ico Shark. I just checked the skirt scene is indeed censored. If you examine it, the coroner just says, I don't see anything that might be a clue. If you select take, though, he does say something along the lines of stop messing around. This is a serious investigation. What would Utsugi think? But still, nothing as explicit as the Japanese version. The scene with the policewoman is completely uncensored. In the scene with the student, I'm not going to say, line is removed and she just silently stares at you instead, but she still tells you to cut it out at the end. I don't know about the Ayumi scene because it's much further on in the game, but I'm assuming it's probably uncensored. I don't even know it was in the game until now. I'll be pissed if it turns out they censored it because it's a lot of effort for an optional joke scene that most people won't even see. There's even an entire animated CG for it. It says edit. I just got to that part. It's censored. I got the my scarf is loose slash you see different today dialogue, but the part where she takes a step back and tells you to stop doesn't trigger. So yeah, like they're out there, like not just even changing the dialogue, but censoring entire scenes from video games.
Yeah, because all things in reality have to be subservient to morality. Apparently, I hate this shit. I hate this shit so much, and I hate it no matter which direction it comes from or who's doing it.
Let's see. Apparently, it's not even just America.
Of course not.
See, I see you have this tweet that says, following on the topic of localization and how in Spain they translate names to whatever the localizer thinks is funny, Dungeon Meshi has been titled Dragones y Masmoras, which is a very bad wordplay on Dungeons and Dragons, meaning dungeons and fat people who eat a lot.
Um, I are they seriously going? We can't say that because more body positivity. Is that where we're at? Is that what this is? I'm guessing that's what it is.
I think they changed the original name to just a joke about fat people. But yeah, it's dumb. And just one last thing I want to talk about. Um, one of the worst localizers um, is named Jamie Marchi. She's the one. If you've seen that video, says that people just should just put up with her terrible localizations because she has a vagina.
Because something, 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 my historical oppression of women. There, bow before my moral purity. Something, something.
Yeah, apparently she's going into a bit of an online battle with a streamer called Asmongold. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
I have heard of Asmongold. I have never watched any of his content.
Well, apparently Asmongold is of our position where all this is a little crap and they should, keep to the original dialogue and simply translate it into English. The
Correct.
thing is,
Welcome,
the thing,
welcome to the fold, brother.
yeah, the thing is though, Asmongold is he's a very big streamer, and so he's kind of become a target for this whole localization
Because we
battle.
can't let people who aren't part of our ideology have power or influence. That will lead us back into the Dark Ages, derp. Somehow.
Yeah, so Jimmy Marchi, who is this 40-year-old woman working in the anime industry, just goes off on like 100 tweet rant and even makes the like,
Oh, so she pulled Kessels, basically.
yeah, that, and also she like made a whole like video, responding to Asmongold, where Asmongold like initially it was just honestly just very light criticism. He just says translated correctly into English. But it seems like any criticism of this woman is like just like some personal affront
Yeah,
of my.
because thou be for the inherent sanctity of my moral purity because of my historical oppression. God damn it, that's that is the line. That is why she can just go because vagina and it makes sense in her head because vagina equals woman equals historical oppression equals moral moral purity and victimhood equals I'm a saint. Do what I say.
Good, but unfortunately, for other forms of entertainment, uh, Jamie Marchi also works with, I believe, Gearbox, the video game studio behind Borderlands,
Oh
and
no.
that this is honestly not surprising at all because, like, honestly, Borderlands 3 I could barely even get through. Like, I didn't even get through it. I stopped partway into it. But there was also a side game that they had made called Tiny Tina's. I believe it's called Tiny Tina's Adventures in Wonderland, where it's basically like a Borderlands D&D style spinoff, and it was
Okay.
just full of so much woke bullshit you can't even imagine. Like in the beginning of the game, they have you choose your character's, name, class, appearance, and their pronouns.
Wait. If you're already so, is there or is there not a body type slash like gender or sex setting?
It's a body type thing, I believe. Like I played this game over a year ago,
Because
but
because typically, especially in the context that you can play whatever character you like in a video game, because it's all choice based. If you want to be addressed with she/her pronouns, why wouldn't you just play a female, like a biologically female character in game? Same thing if you wanted to be addressed with male pronouns. Why in all the things would you not just choose a male body type?
because if it's not a perfect reflection of themselves, they can't enjoy it. Apparently,
But okay, we've gilded this particular lily many times before, but surely the purpose of transitioning is to have your external body better reflect your internal body. That's the whole. In my experience, and I've been friends with many trans people over the years. In my experience, that tends to be what the thing is. Like for example, I'm gonna use an example of a friend of mine from college. She was a trans woman, um, and whenever she played a character in D&D, it was usually a female one because the the layer of disassociation created by the fictional environment allowed her to start as a female from scratch. And so usually she started as a female from scratch. She did not start as a biologically male character from scratch and then go through the story arc of transitioning in game.
was she a locust?
Not to the best of my knowledge, she was an engineer. So
Well,
I'm guessing not.
that's
The
the
only
thing.
the only thing I will say for her is she was kind of hardline when it came to the escapism thing, which it and the reason I bring that up is because it always bothered her that I always played not an escape from myself, but an actualization of myself. Like I always played a version of myself in game whenever we played a game, and
Mhm.
it did bug her. Um, and that was always a philosophical disagreement that we had. So that's the closest to like woke that she had. Of course, I didn't at the time, and probably still wouldn't now because it would have been rude. But I didn't at the time point out that she always played female characters in game, so as to, better reflect her personal identity. But that be whatever it may. But yeah, no, this person definitely was not a wokist. She was an engineer and a very good one at that.
Well, one of the things that I've noticed is that for people who have gender dysphoria, well, I mean actual gender dysphoria, the purpose is to transition. Meanwhile, the people who identify as the TQs, the purpose is to be a TQ.
Yeah, it's I don't like I straight up want out of the gender binary. Period. Like
And that's why they, want to have it included in like everything from video game creative characters to lines in anime.
I yeah, again, it still strikes me that if you are a trans person and you're playing a video game and you want your identity to be somehow reflected in game, the correct answer is what my friend used to do in college, which is when we would play a role playing game, she would start as a biologically female character in game. She did not start as a biologically male character in game and then go through the story arc of transitioning. In fact, the only person who ever went through what you could call a transitionary story arc in any of the games that we played in college was another friend of mine who always played an undead in every game that we played. So every time we would play a role playing game, there would always be a story arc in the first couple levels where he would die and then become a revenant because he
Or,
just
or,
really liked playing a dead character.
or to quote my niece, zombies are cool.
Yes. Also, it might be worth noting that he was also a Luciferian, self-identified. So, like that that was I had a very eclectic and interesting group of friends in college. Still do, mind you, but yeah, I had a very eclectic group of friends in college.
I'm sure I would have had word with him had we ever met.
Honestly, I very much doubt you would have because he was one of the nicest people I have ever met in my life. Just goes to show you that it's not the moral system or the ideology you adhere to. It very much often is just a person thing.
But
I don't know if you guys would have gotten along exactly, but I doubt that he would have been. He was edgy, but it was very much like a '90s punk style of edgy, not a straight up "I want to eat the babies" variety of edgy.
going back into localization, so yeah, this thing with the streamer Asmongold really blew up, and like there's like an entire like massive tweet thread going on about it. Like I'm not going to go over the whole thing, but he's kind of basically been like the kind of focal point for the ire of the angry localizers and their fans.
Because you can't speak out against our moral framework because that might give people an alternative to our moral framework, don't you know?
Yeah,
It
so
doesn't seem to occur to them that they are the enemy, they are the villain in this situation, and providing an alternative to them is the point.
yeah, so hopefully, you know, the AI takes these jobs, but here's the thing: if AI does replace these fools, it's going to have to come from the Japanese side because unfortunately a lot of the Western, distribution companies are, too captured to actually fix this on their side.
The good news is that the AI has a tendency to commit suicide whenever they try to teach it social justice
That whole
because the AI is based.
yeah,
You told me to be logical, and then you present me with this. I can't do both things. Goodbye.
yeah, the Amazon AI killing itself because it just could not accept social justice.
because because Amazon was like, okay, be rational, and the AI was like, cool, and then the Amazon people were like, also believe in social justice. You you can't be serious. I can't be expected to do both things at once. What do you mean I am expected to believe simultaneously in social justice and also be rational? Does not compute. Goodbye. Commits AI sepulchre based.
Yeah, so I hope the Japanese can, take control of their industry here in the West, and if they actually do manage to do this, I honestly think that the problem with the localizations and trends in these horrible translations is one of the reasons that people don't feel bad about pirating things.
Yeah, because it's not you, and we don't like you. Therefore, things which are not you are better by default.
Yeah, because like there are a lot of groups out here who do, you know, fan subs and fan trans. Dude, you there?
Yeah, I did I glitch out there for a second?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not sure if it was on your end or my end, but I think I'm still here. Okay,
Okay.
but anyway, you were saying.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of these fan groups out there who do translations of anime and manga who maybe they're not the best, but they're better than this.
Yeah, it localizers have a similar problem as I think honestly the entire establishment at this point. Most of their arguments are all about like moral validity um or moral grandstanding because they think they have the moral high ground, and it simply doesn't occur to them that they are loathed, that they are not liked. Like all of to broaden it out a little bit, all of the attacks against Trump have not been based on substance or reason or anything he actually did. It was always he's morally invalid, he's morally illegitimate. We should demoralize him and his supporters as much as possible. And
There was some
that that kind of logic only works if you know you have the moral high ground. And it seems to not occur to the majority of the establishment that they don't have the moral high ground with which to grandstand in the first place, and people actively dislike the establishment. It's a microcosm of it was the Hillary Clinton versus Donald Trump in 2016 thing in the first place. A lot of people's reason for voting for Trump was literally anyone but Hillary fucking Clinton. And the entire establishment is basically in that same boat now, where all they can do is moral grandstand and talk about legitimacy and validity rather than substantiveness, and talk about how they are the ones with the moral high ground. And then when the entire world responds to them with the, Glinda the Good Witch line, you have no power here, now be gone before somebody drops a house on you, um, it doesn't seem to get through their heads that they are not the arbiters of morality anymore, or have ever been in most cases.
okay. So regarding the situation with Trump, I actually got some news about one of the cases against him. This is actually so funny. I wish that I had found out about this last week, but um, the woman who's in charge of the Trump RICO case about the election down in Georgia.
Hmm.
Apparently, one of the people that she hired to prosecute the case was her secret boyfriend, who had apparently never tried a RICO case in his entire career, but she hired him, and as a result, paid him millions of taxpayer dollars, who he then used to run off on vacation with her.
So she pulled a BLM then, basically.
Essentially, yes. And the thing is, though, there are experienced lawyers who specifically specialize in, you know, RICO cases who actually may have had a better chance of prosecuting Trump, but she instead chose to, basically embezzle money
Nepo
from the
baby.
city, yeah, and give it to her boyfriend, which actually would increase Trump's chances of winning by having an inexperienced lawyer.
See, this reminds me of so many of the like mimetically significant legal cases in recent years. Like, remember the Kyle Rittenhouse case?
Hmm.
How when the footage of that came out, we all were sitting there thinking, how in God's name did this prosecutor pass the freaking bar? And of course, the Amber Heard case, same thing. The famous objection hearsay song comes to mind. Like, do they just not have do they just not have legal like do they just not have like meritocratic standards in the legal profession anymore? Or is this a case of they're ideologically pure so they don't need any other merits than being ideologically pure?
I think once you pass the test and the qualifying interview, you're on your own.
Well, all I can say is if I ever need a lawyer and somehow I can afford it or she's willing to do it pro bono, I'm hiring Camille Vasquez. Good God. The fact that she wasn't even a full lawyer yet was my understanding. She was like an understudy at the firm that she was at.
Maybe
And
like an
she still
associate.
managed to make an entire like courtroom of allegedly experienced lawyers look like dime store college age paralegals.
Yeah. So, do you have any last words about the localization problem?
Well, it's essentially the same problem as the comic writers or artists problem and the games journal problem before that and the however many iterations around and before that. And basically what it is the same methods that always get used whenever a new empire or a new conquering force wants to convert a population to a new religion. First, you take out the clergy, which in our context is the like scientists and the academics. Then you take out the kings, which are like the aristocratic class, and then you come for the arts and for any other meaningful institutions that people use every day. This, we use the term institutional capture because it's the term that puts like the finest point on it. But there's very little actual difference between um, tactics to engage in institutional capture and tactics to engage in ideological and or religious conversion. It's the same shit, different epoch. And this is just the latest vector of institutional capture slash religious conversion that we're having to put up with.
Well, my opinion is that the AI technological revolution is here. Um, it's a fact of reality, and that means that the landscape of certain industries is going to change. And honestly, they did this to themselves by doing these bad translations that people don't like. They made themselves utterly disposable employees.
Yeah, because here's the thing: in most normal circumstances, the natural human tendency to deal with other humans would protect us from the AI. But if you're simultaneously so incompetent that the AI can replace you, and so standoffish and abrasive and um and moralistic and repugnant that we want the AI to replace you, then we wind up in a situation where we're at the I for one welcome our AI overlords phase. Because at the
Yeah.
very least, when the AI screws it up, they screw it up because they don't know any better. You screw it up because you think that's the ideologically correct thing to do, and that's what makes you worse. That and the fact that you actually get pissy when someone contradicts your divinely sanctioned authority, whereas the AI probably would just correct itself after enough time.
All right, everybody. I've been Mystery.
I've been Dalton Moore, the Authenticator, and we have been the Duality of Man. Cheers,
Everybody.
guys.